Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Counterclipping Show number 160 for February 12th, 2024. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Before we get started, our topic is Wargame space footprints. We tackled time footprints a few weeks ago. We'll eventually tackle the topic of brain cell footprint, but not tonight. We'll probably touch on that topic. Who am I kidding? But we are going to talk about how much space wargames take to play, the big and the little tonight. I want to especially focus on the littler stuff because I talk about the bigger stuff all the time. We are clipping Dead of Winter, and I'll talk about why in a little bit. We are drinking. This was gifted to me at last year's Buckeye Game Fest. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight, more later. Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Rye. It is outstanding. Now, I'm not the world's biggest fan of the regular Jack Daniels, but their specialty bottlings tend to be at least good and often excellent. And this stuff is great. I will talk about Buckeye Game Fest and Winterfest and a bunch of other stuff this evening. But before we get started with that, I'll remind everybody to like the video, thumbs up if you have not done so already. Subscribe to the channel if through some unhappy mischance you have not yet subscribed. And if you want to help support the channel, well, you're doing that just by being here tonight. So thank you very much to each and every one of you. If you would like to do more, there's a bunch of links to do that in the video description. And a big shout out to the official sponsor of the Counterclipping Show, that is Noble Knight Games, and we'll be hearing from them at some point this evening. So big thanks to Noble Knight Games, and big thanks to new patrons, Richard Coker and Michael Avanzini, who both signed up this week at the veteran level. So thanks, Michael and Richard. The support is much appreciated, and I have missed some counters here. I have a pretty specialized way to organize GBACW games at this point that is informed by playing them And am I missing a counter? I'm not actually missing a counter, I'm sure. I'm just not seeing it at this exact moment. Well, presumably it will turn up sooner or later. So, nope, apparently not. Unless there's an errated leader that's the wrong color, which is not impossible. So, I'll remind everybody, too, that there's an affiliate link to Noble Knight down in the video description. Use that link when you buy stuff from Noble Knight, and you will also be helping to support the channel and helping to support my entirely unrealistic campaign for North Africa. I don't know if I'll have an update on where we are with this next week, because next week's show will be live from Winterfest, but I ought to by the following week, one would hope so. So, outstanding. Glad to hear that, Wolf Dog, about the counter tray. So, before we get any further into any of this, let's give a shout out to Bayonet Brant from the Armchair Dragoons, Bill Simoni, Bob Kowalczyk, Brent McCabe, Chad Kennedy, Charles Latora, Daniel Silverthorne, Eric Hansen, F.S. Mora, Grunyard, Rich, Half-Ass Gaming, Hex to Hex, Hexy, thanks for stopping by, HUN644 New, Iggy Crichtel, the legend himself, Fucko is here, Jack Duffy, welcome to the show, Jeff Beeler, Jeffrey Wesovich, Jeffrey Edwards, Joe Okabayashi, John Stanley, Carl Creeder from the Wargame Bootcamp, Carol Harris, Mark G, Mark Hodgkinson, Meandering Mike, Michael Evanzini, Michael Schmaus, Molotov, Cockatiel Games. I'm shocked that I haven't bungled that yet. Neil Bedke, Patrick of Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials, Paul Sin, Perry Sparopoulos, Rob Johnson, Sean Tarnos, Stacking Limit is here, Steve Emmons, Stigler, the grouchiest man in Wargaming is here, Tailwind, the Command Tent, Tim Greenhoff, Vicky, welcome back to the show. Wade Moore, William Ahrens, and Wolf Dog. So welcome everybody to the show. So let's get the business out of the way first. So we are in the midst of prepping for Winterfest. I have started packing the stuff that I will be taking. I think I announced last week, and if I didn't, I did it as a short. We will be playing On to Richmond 2 using the On to Richmond campaign. That is the 1862 Peninsula campaign. It's a fascinating campaign. The book on the subject has arrived in time, I am pleased to report. So we'll be able to get some reading in on the campaign prior to that as well. If, by the way, I want to make sure I mention this. If, by the way, anybody was foolish enough to, based on my say-so, sign up to Spotify for the sake of listening to audiobooks, rethink that, because apparently you only get like 15 hours of audiobook listening time per month. Now, it does roll over, and you can, of course, buy extra time, but I can just go buy the goddamn audiobooks from Amazon. If I was going to do that. That was the whole point. I figured, hey, I'm paying for this anyway. And I mean, I'll use it to whatever extent I can, but it's still fairly annoying. The book I got is Stephen W. Sears' I think it's called The Road to Richmond. It is, however, the Stephen W. Sears book. I like Sears a lot. I've got a bunch of his books. He is very good. He has a great place to start reading about Civil War topics. Start reading about specific Civil War topics like battles and campaigns as opposed to a general history of the Civil War. Highly recommended. So, yeah, I'm not sure where this extra leader, is supposed to be. I don't think I put him in the wrong place, although that certainly wouldn't be the weirdest thing that would have happened today. So, getting audiobooks from the library is a great idea. This long commute is what's killing me on this. Libby, this is something that's worth looking to, actually. This is, I think, an app. All right, Stacking Limit. Yes, I did. I just haven't responded yet, so sorry about that, but we'll get that taken care of at some point. I have not looked at Petersburg at all. It's something I'd like to do, but the consensus was that we wanted to do something earlier in the war, which I can understand, to be honest. So, all right, So there's Confederate units. I don't know. I'm missing the leader for these one units. So we are clipping the Bruce Catton is a good writer and great real flair for titles. John Clark, and recommended, but it's also Catton is also wrote in the middle of the 20th century, and I would say there's more recent historiography that I would look at first before Catton. But if you have Bruce Catton books, by all means read them. Because they are good. So just a little bit dated, that's all. But that's kind of how history works, right? So anyway, Bayasia Atkins, welcome to the show. Thanks for stopping by. All right, let's get Kyle Harris down here and try to keep up to. What's up with this? I'm not aware of anything that may have happened here. Command tent. So here's why the answer is currently no. Because I need a specific, and if anybody wants to point this to me, let me know, because I can use this. Let me get the banner up, by the way. So the Discord community link is in the banner, is in the ticker, as is my email address. So if anybody, I've got these stock images of waving flags that I use for various graphical purposes when doing play aids. And I can't find one for the correct 1862 Confederate flag, which is the quote-unquote stars and bars, which is the three stripes with however many stars at the time. The flag kept changing as they kept adding more states to the Confederacy, even those states that did not actually join the Confederacy, like Missouri. So if anybody has like a waving image of that or knows where one can be found, let me know, because that is right now the flaw in those displays. Because it's going to be super duper useful, and it's 4 pages, by the way, to do the whole campaign. There's a lot of units in a lot of GCACW campaigns, but that one specifically. So, is it one of those? Oh, whatever. In that case, I don't care. That ship has sailed a long time ago. So, but I probably heard some fallout from that, actually. So I'm not going to go into it because I didn't see any of it and I don't care. So that's as simple as that. So anyway, right now I'm like on fire for American Civil War material. So I had to pull On to Richmond down off the table because I'm packing it because we're playing with my copy. And I replaced it with GMT's U.S. Civil War, which annoyed me immediately because I have the original printing. There have been 2 subsequent printings and 2 subsequent revisions of the rulebook, and I don't particularly want to print another rulebook, but I may end up doing that because I do think it's a really very good game. What annoyed me, however, is I don't know that I noticed this before, or whether or not I noticed it, but the counters are all different fucking sizes, and that bothers me. I don't like that. Now, they're bigger counters, and the stacking's not enormous, but still, it creates problems that I'd prefer not to have to deal with. So it may be that I will end up buying a new copy of that. Hopefully that will happen. I wasn't really I can't keep saying I'm not leaving Twitter until they throw me out or decide I gotta pay to use it, because fuck that, I'm not doing that. As long as the platform remains somewhat useful, I will stay there, at least with a token presence. Hexy, I have played the first 3 scenarios out of All Green Alike. No, I'm sorry, the first 2 scenarios out of All Green Alike. And I liked them. All Green Alike is one of those sort of deeper end campaigns for GCACW. I don't recommend it as a first campaign, even though it's earlier chronologically than the other campaign in the box, which is the second Manassas campaign. They're both really good. I had a good time soloing it, and I'm pretty much, the idea here was not to have a fulfilling solitaire experience, but to just kind of refresh my memory on the rules. And there's just some special stuff happening in First Manassas because it's so early in the war. No, this is not on purpose, right? If it was on purpose, I still don't like that, but I wouldn't have probably gotten as irritated about it as I did. These are it's just sloppy die cutting. I mean, the original printing, this is the original printing. And I don't believe there's any counter changes or counter errata, or for that matter, map errata or changes. But the counters are a mix of different sizes, which annoys me. I do still like the game a lot. So anyway, the reason we are clipping Dead of Winter here this evening is because the current talk, and we'll iron this out at Winterfest next week, the current talk is that we will be playing this at Buckeye Game Fest in late April. So I'm not sure what else is going on, and I am not even going to do any, like I said, a number of decisions will get made at Winterfest, I am sure, and we'll figure it out at that time, and probably not just for that game. But after that, I'm going to start actually doing legwork on Buckeye Game Fest. So Meandering Mike likes the different counter sizes in Thunder in the East. I found it distracting, to be honest, because it's not just different counter sizes, it's different counter shapes. And it's not just two different shapes, there's a bunch of different shapes. I thought it was distracting. I thought it was overdone and distracting, and unnecessary. I don't know that it adds anything to the game. Now, the unit size counters I didn't mind, where you've got small units, medium units, and big units, and you have small counters, medium counters, and big counters. That I didn't really mind. So, excellent. So, Brant will be. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of coin at Buckeye Game Fest. I'm not really prepared to talk about that right now, because like I said, I haven't been paying super duper close attention at this point. So I have played this already, by the way. We played, it's on the channel too. We played the sort of, I'm going to call it the approach to battle game. That particular scenario has some issues. We're just going to play the battle at Buckeye Game Fest, because otherwise we weren't going to get it done. So, but I like the game. It's an interesting battle. Western Theater, it's Bragg versus Rosecrans. It is a solid game. I would love to see them redo this in much the same way that they're talking about redoing 3 Days of Gettysburg. Tim Greenhaw asks, would like to jump into GCACW, Hood Strikes North, or On to Richmond 2. So I actually did a short about this the other day, and I'm going to say for most people it is going to be Hood Strikes North. For a couple of reasons. One is just what it costs, right? Hood Strikes North is not cheap, but it's not crazy. On to Richmond 2 is a very expensive package. Now, I happen to think that it is worth it, because there's just a ton of content in it, but, and you are, frankly, as Stacking Limit points out, you are getting a ton more game in On to Richmond 2. You are basically getting 3 games in that box, but it is expensive. The other thing is that certainly, I really haven't looked closely at Petersburg yet, but certainly Grant Takes Command, and if you want to play the campaign games, Grant Takes Command and On to Richmond have reasonably involved campaign games, whereas Hood Strikes North's campaign game is pretty minimalist in terms of extra special campaign rules. So bear that in mind. I mean, if you can spend the money, I'd say spend them, and you're sure you'll like it, spend it on to Richmond 2, but if not, and you want to try it, then absolutely go for Hood Strikes North. So, Stigler says, and I actually saw this live when it was happening, Dead of Winter took a long time to sell out. That's true. On the other hand, I do feel like we are seeing a significant resurgence in interest in GBACW thanks to the last several outstanding releases. So, I wouldn't say no. They can always put it on P500, and if it doesn't make the number, well, it doesn't make the number. And they can decide behind the scenes whatever they would like that number to be. So they're not committing to, they're not committed to printing anything, right? Even where games that have reached, and now there's reasons for this, of course, we've talked about that. Even games that have reached their number over a decade ago are still not out, right? So, it's not like anybody's sending them the bill right now. So, in any case. So, anyway. Perry Sprapolis likes the different counter sizes in Thunder in the East. Thunder in the east, thunder in the east, thunder in the east. As it makes scanning the board and identifying things easily hard on storage solutions, though. Yeah, I mean, I can. It's a big box too, so I don't know that I have a big problem with that. I will be storing this, assuming it works. I think it will. I will be storing this game in what I believe will be 2 or 3 GMT counter trays. Now I'm going to use, I'll show you the counter trays in a second because they're special counter trays. These are the counter trays with the dividers in them, which I will divide the units by brigade in so doing. And that makes it reasonably, it's 4 counter sheets here, so it's not a million counters, but I also got to consider whether we've got like the ammo counters or whatever they left out, so that's annoying. All right, so I think I've talked about all of that. I guess the last news item I have to mention is the... you can also look at... if you're in Canada, you should check out Tadnac Games. If you're in the U.S., you should check out A Gray Rooster Sales, agrsales.com. I think it's .com. They'll probably have the best price on most MMP products that are available nowadays. And they're right here in Ohio. No, you cannot pick up locally, which is a little irritating, but whatever. In any case, I guess let me also, before I forget to say it, if you want to throw a super chat or super sticker in, I will definitely respond to the comment. Might not get to it instantly because I've been getting behind on the chat pretty badly lately, but I will get to it sooner or later. So, Jeff Beeler mentions that he picked up Stonewall Jackson's Way from Tadnac for a good price. Very good. Well, I mean, it's a pretty well-known campaign, right? It's first, Stonewall Jackson's Way 2 is first and second Manassas. You have the original Avalon Hill game, which you can normally get pretty cheap. You can, ooh, nice, not very nice. Eric Goebel, good catch on this. Nice, very nice. I have no idea what McKay's is. I'll assume it's some kind of local establishment. And I am not particularly within close driving distance of Chattanooga, unfortunately. So, Jessa1, thanks for stopping by. It is crazy o'clock in England at this time. It's well after midnight. So your presence is much appreciated. You can catch up on the stream later. Tony Mammo, I actually flashed this earlier. I don't have an update is the update. So the answer is no, and I'm not sure that I will have an update next week either because I will be at Winterfest and I'm not sure I'm going to have the bandwidth to pay attention to this. But hopefully we will have an update the week after. I think we should. I think we might actually get it at any time. Maybe even before I leave for Winterfest, in which case I'll set it up prior to leaving so that it is ready to announce next week. So the support there is also much appreciated. And for somebody that asked what the price target was, I kind of arbitrarily set the price target at $1,200. I don't know if it'll be that expensive. Maybe it'll be more. Who knows? But once we get into that neighborhood, we can start watching for arriving copies at our friends at Noble Knight. We may field trip out there at some point later in the year too, but we'll see how that actually works out. All right, Michael Avanzini picked up Atlanta is Ours for $110 in the shrink. Atlanta is Ours is neat. It's late war, it's Western theater, even though the definition of Western theater is a little bit weird. But I don't think I got Operation Typhoon from Noble Knight, if you mean me. I don't have Traveler Tuesday stuff coming up. Now, actually, there was one other thing that I didn't put in the notes that I will mention. We have officially started, as in we have characters for the RuneQuest game. Now, we've got one other person who we've got to catch up to with that, but we do have characters for the RuneQuest game. We'll be starting that after Winterfest, so that is also quite exciting. And I've kind of timed everything so that it'll be basically Winterfest to BGF, and then between BGF and Origins will be Call of Cthulhu, and then after Origins I will have a little more leisure to do something different, which could be Traveler. We'll see. Meandering Mike talks about coupon codes. This is cool, but they don't actually do like permanent. They've never done permanent coupon codes to my knowledge. So where they have, they do have sales all the time. So, and they usually have stuff on sale, just randomly too. So so keep an eye on their sales. They do a big annual sale as well. Perfidious Albion asks about the Twilight 2000 reprint. Yes, it is sitting over somewhere over here. Yeah, okay. It's right next to Dallas the RPG. I did pick it up. It is nicely presented. I think I'm not like crazy about that system. It's essentially, it's a pretty similar system to the system that appears in a number of other Free League games, and I'm not that sweet on that. But it is certainly nicely presented, and if you're going to play it like in a physical room with physical players, physically present, there's certainly lots of cool play aids and stuff like that. So Jeff Beeler just got his Traveler Rule Builder's Handbook and Imperial Navy hardcovers. Imperial Navy I got already. Rule Builder's Guardbook I've got in. I don't have that yet. So now we did this with War in Europe back in the 90s, and we did not find that it worked all that well, to be blunt. We found that it pieces fell off kind of constantly, and it left a greasy residue on the pieces. And when you're talking about a pricey out of print collectible, even at the time like War in Europe, I would rather not deal with that. So that said, I'm basically not playing War in Europe in this room because I think I figured out that if I built 3 of those 2 4 by 4 foot table extensions, I could fit it, but it would eat the entire room and would be very difficult to maneuver in that room around it. So I'm just not going to do that, I think. Now, that's not to say I'll never play War in Europe again, because I think that it's pretty likely that I will. But that segues us very well into the topic for tonight in, I don't want to say record time, but, you know, shorter than sometimes, which is space footprint. This is something that I worked out kind of exhaustively when deciding what kind of table I was going to build. And it was one of the considered factors is that, you know, what can I fit? What do I have that fits on that table versus doesn't fit on that table? Okay. And I've got a lot of one map war games, and I'm sure that's probably true of most war gamers, I would think. And not all of those actually fit in the footprint of a single map, right? Because you've got the map and then potentially at least you have up-map displays. So, for example, OCS is typically pretty tightly confined to its maps, and then maybe there's like a card to keep track of something. But that's been less true in the last several releases. So Crimea, which is also on the table right now, is one map, and it has 2 8.5 by 11 displays, and then 1 extra half-size 8.5 by 11, so it'd be 8.5 by 5.5 display. So it all kind of fits at one end of the table, which makes me happy. But it is extra space that is being consumed by that game. Now, in principle, on that table, so I feel like there's kind of 2 big footprint tables that people can actually do. Okay, one is the 4x8 sheet, because I could have just thrown the 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch plywood on top of 2 folding tables and called it a day, right? But I needed to cat-proof them too, so that's why I went with something more elaborate. And it was also like an achievable project in terms of woodworking skills and tools and all that stuff. Barely, but it was. This is sometimes true, but not necessarily. I would not necessarily be comfortable assuming this without confidence that it was the case. This is generally going to be true, but so for example, in the Third Winter, it's a 4-map game, and there are some off-map displays, and yes, in principle, you could put at least some of those off-map displays on the map itself in unused corners where there are no troops, because there will be corners where there are no troops. However, in Third Winter, I think some of the reinforcements might come in at Army HQs. Some of the reinforcements might come in on the map edge, although I don't think that's the case, to my recollection, with Third Winter. But you may end up needing to see that space for purposes of trace. And I'm not that confident that I wouldn't be putting something in the way, if that's the case. Matt Van Wielden, welcome back to the show. Crimean Third Winter with Hero City and Forgotten Battles will be a space hog. Yes, absolutely. And that's why I actually want to make one of those 2x4 foot tables that I can like bolt onto the main table, because that won't eat too much space, and it will let me attach Crimea to that table, which otherwise would not fit. So while I had the table free after ripping down onto Richmond 2, I actually threw down just the maps, obviously, because I didn't spend 3 days sorting the counters. Let's get some water here. I threw down World in Flames, and World in Flames will eat that entire table. Absolutely will eat that entire table. It'll fit, but it'll eat that entire table. And you will need some amount of extra space for force pools, but if you handle those the way I like to handle them, which is with little tiny Dixie cups, then those can be on a side table, and that's not much of a big problem. Now, and of course, there's a lot of games that take up less than a full-sized map, right? So you've got some coin games, right? For instance, Cuba Libre is on a smaller than average map. Falling Sky is on a smaller than standard map. Some of the other ones, I think, I want to say all of the ones I actually like the most, which is Pendragon, Fire in the Lake, and Liberty or Death, are all on more or less standard size maps. And basically everything is on the map. There's nothing really off map, except in Falling Sky, actually, which does have off map displays. Perry Spiropoulos has ordered Sound of Drums' Ilau 1807. Now, I did order this. I do expect that it is on the boat along with everybody else in the U.S.'s copy, and I was not sufficiently important for Uva to send me a copy ahead of time. And I'm okay with that. It's not like I don't have stuff to do. So, now we also have, Library of Napoleonic Battles, which has a lot of battles that are on like smaller footprint maps, right? Either half-size maps or in some cases even quarter-size maps. But there will be several off-map displays that you at least want, particularly for the, I was going to say larger battles, but by definition, if we're talking about the smaller than roughly 23 by 34, we're probably not talking about those battles. I think you do want at least 2 pages of 8.5 by 11 off-map displays for Library of Napoleonic Battles. But there's plenty of very small footprint battles. And then, of course, we got ASL, right? ASL goes on that, what is that? 8.5 by 22. Those standard geomorphic maps for ASL, and many scenarios fit on 1 or 2 of those. And you don't really require a lot of off-map space for ASL either. You just kind of need the scenario card, which does have a turn record track on it. The other big size table that is not too difficult to get is a ping pong table, as Eric Goebel mentions, and that is a great choice. I want to say that's about 5 feet wide. I'm not sure what the actual dimensions to the inch are, but it's roughly 5 feet wide and roughly 8 feet long. So it's a little bigger than that 4x8 sheet that I got, and you can fit a pretty big game on it. Garrison Venn, thank you so much for the super chat or super sticker or whatever the hell this is. It is much appreciated. Bob Kowalczyk, table space with Third World War. No, this is so. Part of the issue here is you can fit Battle for Germany, which is confusing because there's a game called Battle for Germany, but there's the first game in that series was called Third World War Battle for Germany, and you could fit that and Balkan Front on my table, no problem. Another great configuration is if you can get 2 standard-sized folding tables, then you should be good for a lot of games. What do we got here? Okay. you'll be good for a lot of games, right? You can easily get a 4... Now, that's 5 feet wide. So standard folding table sizes are 2.5 feet wide and either 6 feet or 8 feet long. On 2.5 by 6 tables, you can get a 4 mapper with not a ton of extra space. Usually, you can get an OCS game on that without too much trouble. Some of the newer ones, you might have a little bit of an issue. Some of the new 4 mappers, like Third Winter, with extra table space, but you can always put that on a side table too. And I actually bought an 18-inch wide side table from Walmart of all places, specifically for like off the table stuff. Primarch X, or Primarch 10, started with a 4x6 table setup, 4x8, wheeled 2x4 table as an end capped handle. Yeah, okay, this sounds great, yeah. Matt Van Wielden, Desert Fox Deluxe. It is a weird layout, but I do think that in the case of Desert Fox Deluxe, you might be able to move everything over as you play, because there's a huge lull in the middle there between Western Desert and stuff that happens over in Tunisia. So you may be able to just kind of slide the whole map surface down. I'm not sure how practical that would be, to be honest about it. I can fit... Well, yeah, you got to have a space to put this stuff, right? And if you've got kids or cats or whatever, whatever kind of wild animals you have in the house that might potentially bungle your expensive Wargame up, you've got to take that into consideration, right? Because that's why I needed this table, because there's no door on the game room. And making a door would literally mean making a door. I would have had to fabricate my own custom-sized door. And then frame it in. And while I'm comfortable with the framing, as soon as I realized I was going to need to do drywall work along with that, my interest in doing so evaporated. The kid gate worked for most of the cats for a while, but not forever. All right, Wolf Dog is having trouble with the tiny counters. I'm a little surprised you don't have a little more issue with the maps, to be honest, because there's a lot of detail on those maps, and it is a little bit hard to make it all out. I'm not really having any problems with the counters, to be honest. And I will in the Europa sense, right? I mean, we're now in the space of games that are bigger than big. I can fit Fire in the East on that table, on that 4x8 table. I cannot fit Fire in the East and Scorched Earth. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm basically okay with that. Now, on 2 8-foot folding tables, I think you could fit Scorched Earth as well. The Urals is one of 2 really not super duper necessary products for Europa. Let me put it that way. I think that if you get Germans anywhere near those Urals maps, the maps that come in the Urals, I think your Soviet player is probably going to have conceded the game some time ago. I ordered it. If you go to Sound of Drums Games website, there will be a link there to the Game Found page, and I believe it is possible to late pledge. Meandering Mike says 5x9 for ping pong. I did not prepare a link for that, by the way. Captain Nolan played War in Europe on a ping pong table. If you leave Spain off, Spain is the map that juts out in the middle of nowhere. You can, I think, get away with a slightly smaller footprint for War in Europe. Even without Spain, it will not fit on 4x8, however. On pool tables are 3. You could throw your sheet of plywood on top of that, though. Primarch 10 went for years with 2.5 by 6 folding banquet tables. Yeah, they work just fine. They are not incredibly stable, so you do have to be concerned about that. Pool tables, not concerned about that at all. And this table out here is pretty friggin' heavy, too. So I only actually had one cat that was jumping the gate to get in the room, to be honest. And then when I brought the table down, I just took the gate down, and because I don't care too much now. I did buy a couple of handles. I may do a video short on this. I did buy a couple of handles for the lids to the table, just to make them a little easier to handle. Haha. But we'll see how well that works. I may need to buy some screws for that. All right, Michael Avanzini finished a room in his basement, 13 by 19, with two 3 by 6 foot tables. 13 by 19 is a great size. It's wider than this, actually. The 18 feet long, this room is 10 and a half by 18 and a half. And the 18 and a half is great. The 10 and a half is just a little bit narrow. If it was like a foot and a half wider to make it like 12 feet wide, I might have done the original plan, which was to do three 4 by 6 foot tables, which would then have been modular, and I could have moved them around, and it would have been a pretty favorable layout, to be honest. And you can get a four map game, again, assuming no off map displays, on a 4 by 6 foot table. So that would have been very flexible, and they could have been arranged in multiple configurations. Unfortunately, knocking a wall down, because I technically could, if you watch the video, I could technically have moved that wall about 3 feet that way, and that would have given me that extra space. But I don't like to do friggin' drywall. Winterson says 5 feet is way too wide if you want to play other more standard games and stay seated. So that's another thing, is this table in here is built at standing height. I did that on purpose. We have ripped through more than half a counter sheet incredibly quickly here. Now I always tell people I don't usually cut counters out of the sheets. I just tear them off. But I am quite careful when I do so. So when I do that, I actually support everything and pop the corners of the sets of counters out, and then bend it backwards so that I am leaving dog ears, but they're then trimmed off. So Doug has first of all, thanks for stopping by. 2 games that won't fit on his 10 by 6 foot table: Case Blue and War Eagle's Dare. War Eagle's Dare is a weird footprint. That's a problematic. It's problematic to fit that on. Interesting. It's problematic to fit that on any table that you might buy, right? Unless you've got some kind of monster conference table or something like that, then maybe it's not too bad. But it's a weird footprint, and that is without attaching the Devil's Cauldron maps to it, which intersect the War Eagle's Dare maps at like a 30 or 60 degree angle. So it becomes even more difficult to deal with that as a single contiguous map. And when we have played it, we have in fact not done so. We have set up the two things separately, and then we have like an overlay where the overlap is on the War Eagle's Dare maps. All right, trying to catch up on the chat here. Wolfdog insisted on a 42 by 80 dining room table. Great size, great size. That is less than 4 feet and less than 8 feet, though. James Whitmer, welcome back to the show. Fire in the East has been a grail game for 40 years. Recently got a hold of it along with Scorched Earth and the Urals, and have realized that you'll never have space for it. I'll be honest, I feel like if you're going to play that, I feel like just playing Fire in the East is going to be a very satisfying experience. If you don't go, mid 40, I think Fire in the East stops in like May of 42, something like that. You're going to get a lot of game in there without having to necessarily get into the Scorched Earth time frame. Games that will fit on a cookie sheet. So interestingly, this is the technique that is used by the World at War people, or at least some of the World at War people, for transporting that around. They put everything on cookie sheets. All the counters are magnetized. They put them on cookie sheets. And the boards are then magnetized, and they can keep everything. That's the storage system, too. It's a neat idea. I don't know that I'm terribly comfortable with it, but it's a neat idea. Ivor Airman, thanks for stopping by from sunny southern Ohio. I don't know what the weather was like down here. It was crap. It was sunny, but not nice today. Highway to the Reich is what, 5 maps? Something like that. I've never owned Highway to the Reich. I pull counters out front to back to front, But then when I bend them back, I bend them front to back, if that makes sense. You just saw me do it. Rewind if you didn't see it. It Never Snows is a little smaller, though. I want to say that's, only 4 maps? Am I right about that? So it's a little easier to deal with. It's still a pretty big game, though. Density is reasonably low in, at least in It Never Snows, which is good, I think, because I feel like super high density. Who the hell are these guys? Oh, I see them. I feel like super high density SCS games tend not to be great SCS games, in my opinion. There we go. More water. So, Permark 10, miniatures games with the Space Hogs requiring lots of real estate. You know what, though? Miniatures games, in many cases, play in one sitting, right? So, well, obviously this is accurate. If they play in one sitting, you don't need to leave them set up, and you can just, play it in the living room, right? Whereas large board war games tend to take up a lot of space in terms of, like, months, too. All right. Brant says that It Never Snows, because they played this at the Armchair Dragoons event in the fall. Says that it's 4 main maps plus the one weird one that hangs off. Yeah, that's kind of an MMP thing. Not necessarily a gamer's thing so much, but it is kind of an MMP thing. Jeff Beeler, I don't think the counters never tear on me, but it hasn't happened very often. So I want to say that E4 Airman mentions 4x6 for miniatures, and I think this is something of a standard size, at least for the 40K people, but I'm not sure how much this has changed over the years. The southern map. So Matt Van Wielden is disappointed the SCS North Africa includes 4 maps. The southern map. So you're talking. So did I do an unboxing of SCS North Africa? I'm not sure that I did, and if I did, I don't remember what the map layout is. But if it is the same map layout, basically, as DAC, which I think it is, other than leaving the Alexandria map off, then it is 4 maps connected on their long sides that go all the way across the whole Western Desert. And most of the action is, in fact, going to take place along the coast, reasonably near to the coast. Let me put it that way. One could, I think, reasonably ask the question of, could you have done it with, say, 3 maps, or maybe even 2 maps, long ways instead? And there are certainly games that have done that. E4 Airman says, 4x6 bolt action, sharp practice miniatures. I'm not sure what sharp practice is. I know what bolt action is. It's the World War II, or one of the World War II miniatures games that do actually get played. Ken X or Ken 10 says he uses a rotary cutter to take. I talked about this before. I have personally destroyed counters by drift of the rotary blade while using a rotary cutter to remove counters from the sheet. So as a result, I have a rotary cutter. Haven't used it in quite a while for this exact reason. I have seen other people do that too, and I don't like that. These games are expensive. I would rather not destroy them. So I don't use anything. Now, where I will cut counters out of the sheets is if there are center nibs. Where the hell is this going? Nah, not somewhere we're doing yet. If there are center nibs, or if the counters aren't being removed cleanly, then I will absolutely use a some kind of utility knife, and that's usually what I will use, is actually a utility knife rather than anything more exotic than that. I've seen people use scissors. For the longest time, Fucko cut his corners with scissors, And you'd never know by looking at them. And I'm like, man, that's insane. There's no precision there at all. And yet I didn't feel like they were any worse than, your average corners that were clipped with a toenail clipper. So Perry Spropoulos has ruined counters. Yeah, so I would just rather not. Now, another one that I will cut out of the sheets are the ones from Thin Red Line, because they've got some kind of coating on the counters, a feel that I really do like, but as a result, they tend not to pull out too super cleanly. So, I mean, I cut my teeth, on the toenail clipper, and in fact, I still have that entire fistful of toenail clippers here in the drawer, and I will occasionally bust them out to do some like extra trimming or something like that. So where the hell am I here? There we go. All right. I'm content to practice the dexterity skills with the tweezers and the stacks without dealing with the counters. I would rather the counters look nice too. And let's face it, that's a factor. So Findle70 has been experimenting with a new iPad with pencil, converting off-map displays that use markers to keep info, either using PDFs. That's an idea. Not sure I'm super duper comfy with that, but there's nothing wrong with the idea. It's just a matter of do you have the iPad? Do you have the software you need? Does it come with the iPad? Did you have to buy an app? What do you have to do with the pencil? What's the pencil cost? I can tell you. So probably the best, I was going to say go buy folding tables from Costco. Go buy the standard size 2.5 by 6 foot folding tables from Costco. But the last time I looked at those, I did not like them. But you can get 2.5 by 6 foot folding tables, right? Are really there's plenty of reasons to use folding tables. They are modular. You can take them down when not in use. If you've got 4 of them and the game you're playing only needs 2, well, you only got 2 in the way, right? So like the standard size folding tables work totally fine. You can get those anywhere. The Costco ones tend to be pretty reasonably priced. But like I said, I didn't like the ones that they had last time I looked at that there. I'm not Microsoft Cocktail Games. I'm not sure this is still true because I have had the more recent Decision releases like Axis Empires and Battles in the East, and even the magazine games have had counters that basically just fall out of the sheets. Now, this used to be the case, right? Some older Decisions, plenty of older Decision stuff did have center nibs and maybe not the greatest die cutting on the planet. A couple of the things that I are like pending clipping projects, like Empires of the Middle Ages, Decisions, Empires of the Middle Ages, I did have to cut those out. So, all right. Tony Mammal asks, what's my worst counter removal clipping disaster? This is really a faulty counters problem, but I'll tell you the story anyway. And yes, Multi-Man Publishing took care of it. I have it twice in 2 different games, had to ask for replacement counters for MMP products. One was the Greatest Day Gold Juno and Sword, and that was just, there was one of the sheets, maybe it was 2 of the sheets, I forget, had really bad registration problems. I emailed them, they replaced the sheet, it was no problem. The other one, and again, I emailed them, they replaced a sheet, it was no problem. Beyond the Rhine had 2 significant counter problems. One was that they gave me I forget which counter sheets it was, but they gave me like 2 counter sheet 2s and 0 counter sheet 3s, and that was obviously an issue. So I had to contact them about that. And then when I was clipping it, one of the counter sheets delaminated. It just kind of started coming apart in layers. And they had to replace that too. That was very annoying. I tried at first to kind of repair it with white glue. That was just not working well. So obviously I emailed them. They took care of it. So that was probably my worst story. Now, I've absolutely ripped counters pulling them out of the sheet before. But normally, if I feel like the counters are giving me trouble, I will identify that prior to continuing to punch counters, and I will start cutting them out, right? So, I mean, there's no reason to be dumb about it. There we go. There we go. This actually works out perfectly. We are doing the leaders with... The leaders are not on the sheets in the same places as the units, but I am obviously putting them with the units for reasons that ought to be obvious. And here's our man, Harry Heath. All right, so... All right, Findle70 says the pencil was $65, just use Edge or Chrome, built-in PDF reader, nothing extra needed. Okay, that's cool. So another cool thing that I'm seeing somebody do is, and I'd tell you the name, but I'm not sure they're, a viewer of the channel has sent me some stuff about what they're doing with the Apple Vision Pro for wargaming, and it's really neat. However, then I looked at what the Apple Vision Pro costs. It's $3,500. Holy God. So no, we will not be investigating that particular. Cool! I'll be happy to watch somebody's video when they get that done. Because it's neat. Basically playing war games through Vassal in VR. It's neat. But man, not for that price. That is a crazy. All right, Stigler says he doesn't know how many Labatt games he's seen with beautiful counters, but if you had to see a straight line of troops, what's up with that? So Labatt has facing, and sometimes, depending on the formation that you are in, you will be facing a hex spine, and sometimes you will be facing a hex side. This is also true of GBACW, however, where you are facing the hex in GBACW, where you're facing a hex side, you're normally in march mode or under march orders, so you're not in the line at that point. That is actually why you see the lines are not super duper neat. So, hi, McKenna. So, I appreciate that. She will be assisting at the Armchair Dragons Wargaming area at Origins this year as well. Yeah, I mean, if it's just a couple of counters, glue will work. And I'm happy to do that. I've had that happen here and there elsewhere, but in this case, it was the whole sheet. Tom MC mentions the smaller board. Good catch, actually. In fact, I think... Nevsky's definitely got a smaller than average board. It's roughly a half-size map. And I'm not sure I remember about Inferno or Almoravid, which are the other two that I've got. Looking forward to Seljuk. I don't know if that will be a smaller map or not. That's the next one I've actually ordered. Yeah, this is like at least 3 copies of Campaign for North Africa. It's a VR headset. It's an augmented reality headset, much like the Google Glass or whatever that thing was called. I mean, also Apple stuff is always expensive. It's more expensive. It looks neat. I mean, I got to tell you, it looks neat, but not the fully $500. Jesus Christ, I could buy a car for that. It's a little more than that. I mean, if you look at average wargame prices from some publishers, yeah, they probably float around $100. Compass probably floats around $100. But GMT probably averages $75, something like that. There's plenty of GMT games that are well under $100. Sometimes they're under $40 if you get them on pre-order. All right. Med Van Wielden, MMP components had a nice upgrade. God damn it, didn't click. With Crimea, but counter seem unchanged. So the counter design has not changed. However, a couple of years ago, MMP did increase the thickness on their counters noticeably. And I have noticed that in the last several GCACW releases, in the last several OCS and BCS releases, it's not a huge difference, but it does. I could tell by feel that they're thicker than they used to be. These are pretty thin. I mean, not by today's they're fine. I'm fine with these counters, but these feel thin compared to most modern games. And this is from 2009, so it's 15 years old now. So bear that in mind. So, Pepsi Max Fresh, welcome to the show. Seljuk map is the size of Almoravid, so it's bigger than Nevsky. I can live with that. And it's another one where there are off-map displays in the Levian campaign games, but it's not like a huge ask for off-map displays. Yeah, I mean, you could buy a wormwood table made out of rare Brazilian scrotum wood for $3,500. That's actually probably not true. Their stuff is just ridiculously overpriced. I mean, technically that's not true because you can't get a table made out of weird rare woods. But who needs that? Come on. I just wanted a friggin' table to play games on, man. I'm delighted with the table I got here. And is it the nicest table? Nope, it is not. The Oaken Knight made a table, too. His is way nicer than mine. But his looks like a piece of real furniture. Mine doesn't, really. But, again, it's not going to be a dining room table, so I'm fine with that. HUN644 News says Inferno was the same size as Nevsky and Plantagenet. Plantagenet I didn't get. So... a little bit. I mean, some. Yeah, it does need some off-map space, but I mean, maybe I'm just balking at the phrasing there. I think that's true. There you go. We're all old. Welcome to the old folks' home. So, Carolina game tables are nice. That is one of the places that I would look at. Board game tables, their tables are nice too, and they're expensive, but they're not necessarily bananas. The difficulty is that in almost no case is such a table designed to accommodate war games. They are designed to accommodate either board games or RPGs or whatever, and therefore they're not. You kind of got to get a custom size, right? If I want to fit the kind of games I want to fit. I did find that in my research, there are an uncomfortable number of games that I have that will not fit on that 4 by 8 foot table. And again, I can do the 2x4 thing, and we'll see if that ends up happening. I think it will sooner or later. But 4x8 should be plenty of space, and it really is, right? Most games are 4 maps or less. And in fact, a 4-map game is a huge friggin' game, right? In most, the average war game is 1 map, right? So you can easily drop that on a folding table, and if you have... I'm actually going to grab something, because I'm going to show this off. Now, you don't need to go to the hardware store for this. You can just use dice or whatever, right? These are, 1.5-inch pipe nipples, something like that. Black malleable pipe nipples. You can get these anywhere. They're $1 or $2 a piece, something like that. I cleaned them up with a solvent, spray painted them. And what happens, instead of dealing with the lids to the table, when I leave for the week, I'll throw the lids on. But so normally what I'm doing, if I'm like going to walk away for an hour and go eat dinner or something and come back, I will throw 4 or 5 of these down, throw a piece in various places around the map, throw a piece of plexi on top of that to keep the cats off of it. These are relatively cheap, so you don't need some kind of fancy lid arrangement if you don't want to deal with that. So Ken X or Ken 10 says, give his 2x7. 2x7. So Another thing you can do for game. This wasn't supposed to be a game table show, but I mean, I guess it's kind of naturally flowing from the topic. This is the Linman right here. This actual table is the Linman IKEA table, and while they are a bit wobbly, they are. This particular tabletop is roughly 25 inches wide by roughly 35 inches long. And you can pick your own and they're cheap. They're like it's $20 for this tabletop. And then you pick your own legs. And you can get legs in different heights, legs with adjustable heights, all kinds of stuff at IKEA. So what I thought about doing was just buying like 6 of these things. And then it's totally modular. And it's about the same size. This tabletop is about the same size as a Wargame map. But I just didn't want to deal with that, because then I would have had to have some kind of clamping mechanism to clamp the fuckers together. And I didn't want to deal with that. So particularly, I mean, I guess they're reasonably cheap, but if I had bought 6 of them, it probably would have cost me $200, legs and tabletops, something like that, which is not much cheaper than what I actually spent on plywood and 2x4s and other stuff. This is a fair statement, yeah. And it's a great channel too. He's very well spoken. He's got this sort of I'm not going to try and do his voice, but he's got this very smooth voice that I really like. All right, Tom MC mentions Downfall. So it is my opinion. I've been saying this since I got a look at the game. And prior to getting a look at the game, like the pieces, I actually had seen it on a table at Compass Expo. It's 2 maps. Downfall's 2 maps. I'm pretty sure that most of the table space that you need is on those 2 maps, and there's not a lot about map displays. I don't think. I haven't played this thing yet. But the game looks good. It's got a great pedigree with John Butterfield and Chad Jensen. I think that this is going to be a convention standard moving forward. I think it's going to take a year or 2, but I think it's going to be one of those games that we see at basically every convention, like U.S. Civil War. I see U.S. Civil War played at every convention. I'm not sure I saw it at Winter Offensive, but Winter Offensive is a little weird about non-MMP games. It happens, but I don't know. But I saw it at Compass Expo. I've seen it at every Compass Expo. I see it at every Origins. So people love that game, and I think Downfall is going to end up being the same way. All right, you could totally do this. I mean, it's a little inconvenient. If you could put it on the table, I'd rather. Mr. President has a big footprint. I think. All right, so you can see my videos of Mr. President if you want to get a sense of it. It's a big game, okay? I do think that it is a game that, based on the kind of people that I think are going to end up playing that might be interested in Mr. President, they may not be used to games this big. It is about a 2-map game. That's about how much table space it actually takes. It's about the same space as 2 maps. It's 1 full-size mounted map, 1 half-size mounted map, and then there are 2 8.5 by 11 off-map displays that I don't know why they didn't just put on more map, to be honest about it, So one of the things I did lay down, because I hadn't touched it in a while and I had to figure it out. If my table here was about a foot longer, it would fit War in the Desert, which is probably the biggest North Africa game I've got. It's not radically dissimilar in size from Desert Fox Deluxe, which I haven't even tried to do anything with other than punching and clipping it. ASL is 40 next years old. Are we saying that ASL will be 40 next year? I think that's what that means. I think they'll both do custom sizes, both board game tables and Carolina game tables. I think they will both do custom sizes. The designs of their tables are quite different. So, I mean, it's the same idea, but the designs of their tables are quite different. The Carolina game tables tend to be a little bulkier, I think. They have a much bigger lip around the outside. And to a wargamer, that lip is basically, I mean, assuming you need protection of the gameplay surface, that lip is basically wasted space. That to me was to turn off for Carolina game tables, even though the craftsmanship is really good. I really liked their tables. I just didn't think they were as good for wargamers or for monster wargamers as the board game tables were, because they have a much narrower lip around the outside. Some games have a shit ton of displays and tracking tracks and stuff like that. That's kind of the point. It's not just about the map necessarily. Great example, War Between the States, which is, in my opinion, I don't want to call it a flawed masterpiece, because I don't think it's quite that good, but I do think it deserves more attention than it has gotten, and that's why there will be a video on it eventually. It's a 3-map game that has a very similar map footprint to something like, ironically, Three Days of Gettysburg or Turbo Swift Sword, where it's like 2 maps and then another one kind of jutting off of those 2. But there's like another 2 or at least 3 full maps of extra footprint in production spirals and displays and tracks and all kind of other stuff. So it takes up the space of a 5-map game, frankly. That said, it'll totally fit on this table, because those off-map displays don't have to like line up anywhere in particular. So I probably would have rethought the table design if War Between the States hadn't fit on it, because I want to play that again. Eric Hallstrom is clipping counters from A Glorious Chance. So Lee Hanna, who stops by from time to time, who is one of the Columbus bunch, has just picked it up as well, and it looks nice. Somebody reported to me that they had problems punching the counters for A Glorious Chance, but Lee said he did not have any such problems, and nor did I physically observe any such problems on his clipped counters. So now I did unload Mr. President. I may pick it up again when the second printing comes out. Maybe. I'm not sure I'll play it again. I think it's a really neat game. I'm not sure it's my kind of neat game, frankly. All right. Doug, who's got a great setup in his basement, is by Game On Tables, 4.5 by 6. Good size. Expensive, but 100% customized. Company was great to work with. So there you go. Game On Tables. I have not heard of them. Fortunately, they're not the kind of nipples that result in a call to the authorities. Spare hockey pucks. If you got that many spare hockey pucks, you need at least 4 of them. If you've got that many spare hockey pucks laying around, that would work great. That's fine. But the other thing is these have a somewhat narrower footprint, so you don't have to take up as much. You don't necessarily have to move counters to accommodate them. All right, folks, I'm going to try to get caught up on the chat here while we hear from the sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show, our good friends at Noble Knight Games. Take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
All right, thank you, Noble Knight, the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show. Perfidious Albion mentioned Steel Wolves, which I do have. You might or might not be able to see it behind me here. It's right there. As solitaire games go, it may be the only thing I can think of off the top of my head that's really comparable to Mr. President. There's a lot going on there. That said, the map footprint itself is not that big. Speaking of a lot going on, holy shit, is this a big brigade? This is Wharton's brigade. Yeah, this is huge. It's even bigger than I thought, because I've already got some clipped. Mason Duke saw Downfall at a convention last week. Yeah, I think we're going to continue seeing that. I did not get much caught up on the chat. Sorry about that. So we are only about 5 minutes behind. That's not too bad. All right. So the game toppers. There may be multiple companies doing this. What the game topper idea is basically a top that you can drop on a table, and then pick it up and move it around when you want to move the game. And I think that's a cool idea. But then I looked at them, and size was a concern, and I was not willing to deal with the sizes that they had for the prices that they wanted. The ones I was looking at, which were I'm not sure if we're talking about the same people or not. I'm talking about the table toppers that were on display at Origins last year. Like I said, it's a neat idea. But I'm not going to be playing, we're not going to be playing War in Europe on my dining room table. My dining room table is freaking huge, by the way. I think if I put the Leafs in the dining room table, it would probably fit Dak. Actually, I haven't checked it, but I think it might. I think it's longer than 8 feet. I think it's about 9 or 9.5 feet. I want to say Dak, if you set the whole thing up, is about 10.5 feet, something like that. There's a lot to recommend the modular table idea, and somebody up in the chat put in the dimensions. Captain Nolan, the Linmon tabletop is 39 3/8. Of course, it's a metric size, right? So it translates to 39 3/8 by 23 5/8. So it is basically a perfect size for a war game map, right? These are Georgian. These are mostly Georgian Stigler. I think there's some truth to this. I mean, yes and no. I'm not sure this was me that said this. There's an aesthetic element, a tactile aesthetic element to an analog game, a tabletop game, that a video game will not have. Certainly some people will be more comfortable with letting a computer deal with all the little bits and bobs and tracks and statuses and stuff like that Mr. President has, then they will be managing that by hand. I was pretty okay with managing that by hand. Yeah, so what was it, Chapter K that they did that was this very tedious kind of marching units back and forth type of walkthrough. I felt it was a little overdone and not super duper accessible. I feel like the ASL starter kit does a much better job of distilling that down to the basics and then encouraging you to move up to regular ASL, which you don't have to do. This television is currently in my wife's office. That's where it is, because I didn't show the monitor in the video. I've got an ultra wide monitor that's like monitor, but it's one monitor. It's like the size of 3 monitors. So having that 4K TV, well, it is great for Vassal, right? It was like a 42-inch, I think it's a 42-inch 4K TV. That is an amazing display for Vassal. It really helps. Mo from Mo's Game Table, welcome back to the show. Thanks for stopping by. So, Burnside always late. Same deal as at Antietam. Burnside fucking around. So Burnside's got a big core in the wherever he landed in the On to Richmond campaign. There's like a lot of forces there, but not all of them are necessarily on the main map at any given time. There's a lot of off-map boxes for places like Norfolk and Fort Monroe and other stuff like that. So, well, he does. I have to say, he does have wizard-appropriate facial hair, or did have wizard-appropriate facial hair. So there's no doubt about that. So let's take a quick look at the numbers tonight here. Where are the numbers for tonight? There we go. There we go. Well, it'll pop up sooner or later. So I thought about growing the sideburns out. For a while, I was doing the sideburns thing for Origins reliably every year. In fact, people were like recognizing me by my ridiculous sideburns at Origins, and it got a little weird, so I stopped doing that. Also, my wife doesn't really. Actually, she does kind of like it, but. So, Mo, you could probably do some decent sideburns, though, right? You know, get yourself a giant pair of sideburns. Sideburns are awesome. So, one of the things that leads people to say no to certain games is the fact that it's too big for them to play for based on their situation, right? They don't have the extra room, or and in this case, we might mean too big in terms of space or too big in terms of time. Not everybody has the ability to have a huge game and leave it set up for months at a time. So, Achilles, welcome back to the show. And, you know, I am lucky to have this extra basement space with which I can leave a game set up for a long period. It's like somebody, in fact, it was Noble Knight, actually said, "Hey, major life goal." And I thought about that and said, yeah, kind of, right? It's been a goal for years to have like a place to play war games. That wasn't like a one mapper, because I could always accommodate a one mapper, but anything bigger than that was a real problem because we have always had cats. You can't always necessarily keep them locked out of every room. I could at the old house because I had a door on the office there. And there was plenty of floor space, and I actually did at one point have Gauss Atlantic Wall set up there, but it was a pain in the ass. So to have this space with the games on the shelves, and it's all more or less organized, and it's like, yeah, it is kind of a major life goal, major achievement unlocked, I think. I guess GMT's Panzer North Africa is really large and impressive. I had not known that was going to be the case. I figured it was just going to be an average Panzer expansion. Now, it is that a standalone product, or do you need the main Panzer game to play it? That is my question about Panzer North Africa. So there's in recent GMT releases, they've been a bit all over the place. On the one hand, you've got Panzer North Africa, which people are expressing delight about, and Molotov Cocktail Games says that it is a standalone product, which is cool. In that, hey, you buy it, and if you don't want to buy the rest of it, you don't. David Kittleson, thanks for stopping by. But I forgot where I was going with that, unfortunately. Here's Breckenridge. I have not had the chance. I have this queued up. I have not had the chance to watch this yet. And rest assured, I will be badgering Stigler to come on here and talk about GBACW when Sword and Bayonet gets a little bit closer. But I haven't had the chance to watch that yet. So that may be an after the show thing tonight, actually. Time, man, if I could super chat Mo back for this statement, I would probably do so, because he's absolutely right. Time is the most ultimately right, and it becomes clearer and clearer as you get older. It's one of those, God damn it, when I was your age. Time is the most valuable commodity that we have, right? Assuming you have enough money to live the life you want to lead, time is the most valuable thing. And I'm not like I'm not exactly living high on the hog over here, right? I am a simple man of simple tastes, and I have my war games, and that makes me happy. So So awesome. That's awesome. That is fantastic. So we have actually done a little. Richard Coker, thanks for stopping by, and thanks for stepping up to become one of our 2 latest veteran level patrons. So thanks so much. I'm pretty impressed with Axis Empire's Ultimate Edition. We have actually done a little bit of noodling with it, but that more or less has been limited to the Dice of Decision part of it, where we did get, there'll be a video on this sooner or later. We did get a pretty cool, I think, alternate history going on with Dice of Decision. And I am pretty impressed with it. What I'm not sure yet how I feel about Schiffskrieg. I feel like it is not going to feel satisfying to me at the end, which may mean that it doesn't make Dicenso a little more interesting as a standalone game, as opposed to playing it with Totaler Krieg, the European part. However, in general, I've played the game before. I've played the previous edition, and I like it. It's a good game. It doesn't have the easiest rulebook to parse, but once you get used to it, once you start playing it, you will get the hang of it. It's a very solid package. There's just an enormous amount of material in it. The replay value is very high. I might have to open that box up to get more counter sheets out, because I'm almost done with the first counter sheet. So I'm pretty impressed with it. That was not something that Decision sent me. I paid for that, and it was expensive. But I've played the old one. I will play this one. It will be on a table at Winterfest. I won't be playing it, but it will be on a table at Winterfest, and I'll get some pictures of it. It looks nice. I'm sure it's going to play well. If you play it with just like the out of the box stuff, there's more cards and some options and stuff like that. But the feature editions, so if you remember what they were talking about doing originally, there was going to be an expansion that was going to have an expansion, and then that was going to include Dice of Decision and Schiffskrieg. And that ended up being just a whole new edition of the game that included all that material. So there's like a lot of new stuff in it. There's a lot of new optional rules. There's the Fortunes of War. I think that's what they're called. There's like another card deck that is basically random events. You don't like play them every turn, because that would be weird. You end up playing basically each faction, and bear in mind there's 3 factions in that game. We'll end up playing basically one of those Fortunes of War cards a year. And that will end up adding to replayability too. Strategic level World War II games tend to be pretty high in replayability. And this is not an exception to that. So very pleased with it is the short version of that story. All right. So Mo has 3 video projects. Yeah, I've got video projects too, and nothing's getting done at the pace I would like it to. Other things are going on too. That we're kind of in the full swing of CSR business right now too, and that's taking up some time. So, Jason W., this is legitimate, man. The physical and mental energy to play, because you're tied up with other stuff so much of the time, and so much of your mental bandwidth is consumed by work and life and kids and whatever else you got going on. It's finding the drive to play, even though you want to play. I get like this sometimes. It's like, I want to play, but I don't have the energy to do it. Right. I was pretty proud of myself for busting out 3 scenarios of 2 scenarios of All Green Alike, and then 2 scenarios of On to Richmond 2. So since I got the table set up, so I'm happy with that. Having the nice table to play on is probably provides a little bit of extra mojo. You know what I'm saying? Lifestyles of the rich and childless. Tell me about it. So, this would be cool. A little bit of a scoop here, Stigler. So I'll be delighted if it moves up. I'd like to see it this year. I'm not like going to bet money on it this year, but I would like to see it as soon as possible. Very much looking forward to it. Adulting is the bane of wargaming. We would put that on a business card. All right, so Panzer North Africa covers from the Italian expedition, is that what we're calling it, up to the German failure at El Alamein. So it doesn't include the Americans, is what I'm hearing. Italians, Brits, and Germans. There we go. So Carl has clarified. I mean, that's fine. Well, you know, they could do a Panzer North Africa 2, right? It's not like there's a shortage of expansion material for that. That's the kind of game system that they could basically continue doing support products for basically forever. Have they released any just like straight scenario packs for Panzer? I am not... I'm not clear on whether what I'm remembering was for that or for something else that GMT does, like, for example, Combat Commander. All right, Chuck Turner, it's been a while since you've been by. We'll see you at Origins, hopefully, right? And or Buckeye Game Fest. I'll be at both of those. I feel like I have like an actual plan this year to, like, you know, manage conventions and other stuff, and a timetable and other commitments that is working okay, but it still doesn't leave a ton of extra time. So there's that. Stigler, I might give you crap about this, but I don't actually expect you to have a ton of insight on when it will actually be published. I think it would be unreasonable to make an assumption that just because you're the designer, you have any input or information about that at all. That's up to GMT, right? So I completely get that. Oh, look at that. That is Joe Wheeler. Look at that. Look at him. That's why, you know what? Wharton's brigade is this giant Georgia brigade. Wheeler's got a lot of counters too, but some of those might be dismounted cavalry. And that's out of Stevenson's division. Math Fun and Games, welcome back to the show. Also hoping for an expansion for Panzer North Africa. Other Panzer adds expansion boxes. Other Panzer. I mean, there's plenty of material for it, right? So there's no question about that. All right, we're going to bust this box open and see what other Confederate guys we've got to clip tonight, because we've got a half an hour left. And that's it. That is all the Confederate stuff. Okay. All right, well, we're making good progress. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I guess this is totally not surprising to me, though. I mean, the designers are generally you guys meaning the designers are invariably doing this out of love for the hobby and the craft, and not for the rewards and accolades or in the whatever else, what other benefits you might get, right? Not everybody is going to end up becoming a legendary designer like a Mark Herman or a Richard Berg or somebody like that. So there's our boy Breckenridge. Who else we got here? Stevenson, McCown, and Cleburne. And then, Leonidas Polk, the fighting bishop. We got him in this battle too. Not a great political general. But Jeff Davis liked him, so. Oh, the groupies. Is that what it is? It must be all those attractive Russian ladies who are following me on Twitter. So yeah, I mean, I would not make the assumption that designers are being given a particular position of prestige in the pecking order. I would just make the assumption that... Interesting. Anyway, there's a Buford cavalry leader that obviously isn't the same John Buford that we're all familiar with. Stigler says, a parallel to the music industry, real creatives who should reap all the rewards off and don't even control the rights of their own songs. Sure, but we're talking about actual rewards and actual money there, not a chump change that even the wargame publishers are generally making. So I'm really happy with the way this worked out. That everybody seemed to be pleased. Richard Berg seemed pleased. Dick Whitaker seemed pleased. Kind of passing the torch to Dick. I feel like this was a huge thing to resuscitate that system from the sort of torpor that it had been in with GMT. Not that there was like no games coming out, but Berg wasn't really doing anything anymore in this system. So I set Crimea up and then set up a couple other things. A couple of things. Actually, Rome Inc. actually made it to the table very briefly. But then I started playing GCACW. So Crimea is fully set up for the 1941 scenario. I haven't touched it yet. Now, I have played Crimea. I was involved in the pretty early play test of Crimea. So I'm not completely blind on it either, and it's I have not played the later scenario stuff, the Reconquest part. I have played the 41 to 42 scenario, and I liked it a lot. I think it's real solid. It's a pretty good introductory OCS game at that. We are in. So we're all in agreement that Dick's doing a great job. E4 Airman says, "Careful, Golden Ages do end." I am not a huge fan of the terminology or the thinking that goes into the idea of a golden age, okay? I think a lot of times that is absolutely just nostalgia talking, right? Because we say golden age of comic books, for example. The golden age of comic books. Have you read anything from the golden age? Just pick a random comic book from the golden age of comic books, and chances are pretty good it's crap. So I think the Silver Age books were better. I think the stuff that came after the Silver Age was better than that. Now, that's not to say that every trend in comics was great. And, that's just one place where we see that terminology get thrown around. This said, I do think there is something in the idea that we are experiencing now a second golden age of wargaming. We are, this is good. I don't know that there's ever going to be anything else for the ancient world, but I'll, resign myself to being happy with Thunderbolt. I'd say yes. I'd say the period in maybe the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, I think, looked pretty grim. And that's when I got out, right? I was like, well, nobody's doing this anymore. So, now, I was wrong, right? There were, in fact, still people doing this stuff. But it was not that easy to see. And now, thanks to a confluence of factors, one of which is just visibility, because the internet and people are more on the internet now. But one of which is just visibility, but we are aware now that there's all this activity happening in our space. And I think that's marvelous. I am very happy that we are living in this new golden age of wargaming, if that's in fact what we are going to call it. Like I said, I'm not really comfortable with that technology. It gets that terminology. It gets applied all over the place. And I think it's mostly bullshit. I think generally stuff evolves, stuff is different, and people see that and think, well, it's not how it was when I was 15, so it obviously isn't as good. And I think that's nonsense. There's that missing leader out of Breckenridge's division. How about that? Okay. He just magically appeared. I'm not sure what happened. But I am pleased. We will probably, I think, Mo's, whoops. So William Aarons, thank you so much. I turned out I clicked OK. Let me talk about what Mo said in a second. So thanks so much for the support. It is much appreciated. 72, he's thinking about keeping the games he's bought in good condition. I think a good way to keep games intact is to make copies of counter sheets and recreate them. Good for resale as well. So interestingly, I was going through The Coming Storm. It was either The Coming Storm or The Last Success for the Library of Napoleonic Battles. And both of those I got secondhand. And I was going through them, and I realized that in one of those two games, there is a copy of every counter sheet, front and back, on label paper already in the box. And I'm like, oh, this is neat. I think the best, I mean, you got to be okay with Vassal, right? But if you just want to keep your stuff in great shape, I don't care about that. I do because I like my stuff to be pretty. But I ultimately, my stuff is there so I can play it, at least in theory. So if when I drop dead, the games are all punched, I'm fine with that. I have gone. Oops, what did we just do? Yeah, we're good. I have gone so far, and I think I've shown this off before. I just did this with this. I'm kind of doing this as I go. I am stamping the insides of the boxes with stolen from the library of Ardwulf's Lair. And I've got a little stamp, and none of this, no, that's not true. The other thing that I've been doing is, so thanks once again, William Aarons, much appreciated. I've been rounding the corners on player aids and displays so that it is easy to tell my player aids and displays from whoever else may have brought theirs to the table at a convention. I did that after I ordered that stamp at Compass Expo a couple of years ago after playing the War, where we had 4 different copies of all the stuff. And we had to figure out after the fact at the end whose was whose. And I think we did, but it was a pain. So now there is no question, because all my stuff is corner rounded. Like a crazy person. And yes, that was part of the reason I did it too. Just to be that crazy person. Stolen from the depths of Ardwulf. That's not a bad idea, actually. I like to call, and you know, there is a sense in which I am full of shit, right? So I like to call the stuff the library rather than the collection, because for a couple of reasons. One, A, I'm fooling myself. B, I some of it I do have for research purposes, because I noodling with game designs and there's certain things I want to see. That's a big motivator behind why I would like to get a copy of Campaign for North Africa. What does Campaign for North Africa have to teach the game designer, right? I guarantee there's something to be learned from that game. Now, you might be teaching you what not to do. That's a possibility. But I'm going to learn something from it. And there will be video. All right, so there was a good comment on... All right, so we will eventually have some kind of peak and valley, right? I do think that will happen. It's just a matter of time. What I don't think we will see is sort of the disappearance effect that we saw in the, say, late 90s, early 2000s, because everybody's so much more connected now through the magic of the internet. And I say that ironically, because, you know, as somebody who has spent a long time on the internet, I was on the internet before a lot of people were. Back in the days of freenets and BBSs and stuff like that. BBSs was not the internet, but freenet was connected to the open internet. And so, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and it really is a two-edged sword, right? We have wonderful connectivity. That's great. We also have a lot of friggin' bullshit floating around that we have to deal with. So, thanks to the magic of the internet, we have gotten the entire Confederate Order of Battle punched, clipped, and fully organized. Union, there's about 2 sheets of markers and a little over 1 sheet of Union stuff. So I don't think that Vassal did. I think the internet did more broadly, but I think there's a number of factors, right? The internet, in principle, lets people know what's going on, right? It lets people connect. Vassal is undoubtedly a factor. The fact that you can play these games online with a tool that lets you do that has been a huge factor, I think, in the growth or sustenance or whatever you want to say of wargaming over the last, say, 5 to 10 years, right? Justin Creed, first of all, welcome to the show. Do I think it's a golden age? if it is a golden age, it will bring more people into the hobby. I do think we are seeing more people come into the hobby now. Now, there's a lot of different dimensions of that, right? To some extent, we are seeing new people playing traditional, what I'm going to call, for the purposes of tonight at least, traditional war games, okay? We are also seeing a huge field of what I will call, again, for purposes of tonight, crossover games. Games that are probably interesting to people who play war games, but also might be interesting and maybe less intimidating to people who are not necessarily already war game players. And some people will kind of bleed into that crossover game area and then bleed over into the war games. And I'm cool with that. That's cool. I mean, we are a niche. We should be comfortable with that. I am totally comfortable with being in a niche. Every interest I have ever had in anything has ultimately been a niche. So I better be comfortable with it, right? So I do think we are seeing some new people. As many new people as we want, probably not. But, you know, it is what it is, right? Roger Hemstead says, everything is beyond real criticism. Criticism means something specific, and I think we as a hobby, and gaming in general, it's not just wargaming, is generally not good at it. Video games are just awful in terms of quality of critical analysis. Awful. They're better than where war games are. But people can like make a living being a video game critic, right? You can't do that with wargaming. You can't even make a living to being a wargame designer. So Swankiest Nerd. First of all, cool name. Thanks for stopping by, and I'm glad that you are enjoying the show. We are here every week, and then we've got the show with Dan, which we will have the show with Dan tomorrow, by the way. We got Ben Hall will be with us, and we're going to talk about gunpowder games and the different dimensions of gunpowder games. So Jeff Beeler says that for him, GDW and Avalon Hill mostly bridge the gap from the demise of SPI to the demise of Avalon Hill. So that's a huge span of time, right? That's 16 years. That's 1982 to 1998. I do think that in the early part of that, GDW was still, say, up to, I'm absolutely arbitrarily picking a date, approximately 1990, when GDW was still like a major force in wargaming. Certainly they were through the mid-'80s. And then I feel like they became less enthused about wargaming in their latter years. And that's a bit anecdotal, right? Because I stopped paying attention to that because they were not doing stuff that was of interest to me at the time. All right, Aaron Dennis doesn't consider most vassal renderings of current or old games as computer games. I don't consider computer games either. It is a computer tool to play analog games with. I wouldn't consider them computer games, and when I said video games, this is not what I was talking about. Tom MC says, sometimes wargame design develops well and they just get better than they used to be. Imagine seeing anything as elegant as Downfall that long ago. Well, I don't know. I mean, it really did depend. I do think that the standard of complexity has definitely evolved in the direction of greater complexity than we had in the 70s. Remember that when you look at Downfall, it may be tempting to think this is just a fancied up, modernized Battle for Germany. And while it does incorporate that basic idea of Battle for Germany where you're playing both sides, there's a lot more stuff going on that's innovative in Downfall beyond that. So I feel like there was a sort of essentialist design philosophy at play, certainly with SPI in the early days, certainly with Dunnigan, that led into a lot of pretty lean designs. So apparently the stamp is popular. I actually bought two of them. I bought one that just has the little Ardwulf Lair hexagon logo, and that's what gets stamped on the books, because I can't round the corners of the books. That'd be crazy. The Gamers are another one, though, that I think deserves mention of kind of carrying the torch between the, say, starting in the early I forget whether they got started in the very late 80s or the very early 90s, but they were another one that was carrying the sort of the SPI torch. I think if anybody picked up from GDW, it was probably them. I'm not saying there's a direct design influence as such, but sort of picking up that position in the space. But everybody stopped going to conventions, right? All these publishers stopped being present at major industry public-facing conventions, like Origins and Gen Con. And that's a huge problem in terms of visibility. And the internet is what brought the visibility back. The catacombs, apparently. This is true, too, but, there was a point at which Victory Games ceased to be an independent arm of Avalon Hill and just became a label that Avalon Hill occasionally slapped on stuff. So there's that, too. I'm not clipping any more counters here tonight. I was wargaming at least through much of the 90s, but it was, we were doing WIF and ASL was most of what we did. Off the top of my head, we also did War and Peace. There were a few other things that we did, but I wasn't doing hardcore wargaming at the time. So, Carl, thanks for stopping by. Catch you later. Cleveland Freenet, absolutely Cleveland Freenet. There was a Lorraine Freenet too, actually, and I was on both of them at the time. Cleveland Freenet was better, but this was back in the day when it was long distance to call Cleveland, and you had to use a phone line to call Cleveland Freenet. Mike Berticelli, thanks for stopping by. Remembers when Vassal was in its infancy, and it was Vassal, V-A-S-L, and there were only a couple of handfuls of people playing ASL. Yeah, so Vassal's come a huge, long ways. There has been, without getting technical about it, it has simultaneously benefited from its choice of Java as a platform to build on, and now it's a bit bottlenecked because nobody really wants to use Java anymore. So there's that. Brant, thanks for stopping by. I believe Brant has set a record for his attendance this evening. Perfidious Albion says, the funny thing about the war games we play, even old games are still with us and being played, whereas with computer games, you're lucky to get 3 years out of packaged games. To some extent, I think this is true. There are certain, even video games that have been fairly evergreen, and Skyrim would be an example. That came out in 13 years ago, or it will be 13 years ago in November, and people are still playing that bitch. I played it some last year, actually. CompuServe. I was on CompuServe, I was on ASL, and I was briefly on Genie. Did I say ASL? I meant AOL. I spent more time on AOL, but then I found an actual internet provider that would give me like a raw internet prompt, and and did not look back from that. Trade Wars. I remember Trade Wars. I liked Trade Wars. It was primitive. But I had a good time with that at the time. I completely sympathize with this, Aaron Dennis. Extreme discipline in game purchases. Unfortunately, I am failing. Yeah, me too. I've been better in a lot of ways. I'm trying to be focused. It's still tough, right? Because I'll still be like, ooh, shiny, and then like run off after the shiny thing that just came out. I did that with Mr. President. I'm like, yeah, I don't need that. And then I watched some video on it. I'm like, fuck, I need that. God damn it. And I bought it and played some of it and got some video out of it. And I think the #1 video of the year for the channel was one of the Mr. President videos. And then by the like episode 5, nobody was watching it. So we're spoiled in that we play a game once and move on to the next new game. So this is one of the ways in which gaming in general, and war games definitely, have evolved, right? Back in the day, you'd get 1 or 2 Avalon Hill games a year. You'd get the 20 or 30 or whatever SPI put out a year once they started operating at that pace. And then you get a couple of things from a variety of other companies, probably about as much from every company put together as what I'd have to think about this number. Is it reasonable to say that SPI was outproducing the entire rest of wargaming publishing while it was around? I think that might be roughly accurate. So it wasn't the case where you get 5 new games a month from GMT this month, right? And it's not like they're the only ones. So we've got several dozen publishers, each of which, and not all of them are doing 15 things a year, but, GMT's probably doing 70 things a year. I don't know what the number is, but they reliably release, maybe February's the exception, but they reliably release at least 2 things a month. Compass releases 2 things a month. Decision releases roughly something every month, right? So they've got 10 to 15 things a year coming out. MMP probably puts out 5 to 10 products a year, something like that. You start looking at Revolution Games and Worthington and Legion Wargames and stuff like that, and then suddenly you're looking at, hey, 300 Wargames came out this year, right? And you can get them, right? You're not dependent on a local game store that may or may not carry the latest release from Legion Wargames. You just go on Legion Wargames and buy it, or go to AGR or Noble Knight or whoever. So you can get this stuff now, and that has also, I think, made a difference in availability. There are places to go to buy these things. Back in the day, you either mail ordered, or you didn't, or you bought it from a local store, or you didn't get it, and that was it. So now you can get anything you want. Even if what you want is some Victory Games title from the 80s, you can go find that, and mostly those aren't that expensive. One can get, I think I paid Victory Games Silver. You can't see this stuff. The top shelf is the Victory Games shelf, right above this SPI stuff. So Civil War cost me about $25 about 6 months ago because I stupidly got rid of it. It is unpunched. It is absolutely cherry inside. Lee vs. Grant, I bought at Compass Expo. Stuff tends to run pretty cheap at that kind of thing. It might have been $20, something like that. Pax Britannica, same deal. I think I bought Pacific War from Fucko for something like $20. It's beat up, don't get me wrong, but it's a complete copy of Pacific War. Tokyo Express and Vietnam, I got in that bequeathal deal, so I didn't actually pay cash for those. Somebody gave me Cold War in Central America. Vietnam I picked up at Compass Expo as well for something like $20. So you can get this stuff, if you go to conventions or even on eBay, as long as you're patient, you can find this stuff. Wait till Noble Knight has a sale, buy it at Noble Knight. You'd be surprised sometimes at the very reasonable prices that they do have. If it's a high-priced collectible, they're going to want high-priced collectible prices for it, but that's a high-priced collectible. If it's Usenet, oh my God, I spent so much time on Usenet back in the day. I am somewhat glad that much of my more embarrassing years spent as an online commentator are lost to the mists of Usenet. So, well, no, I mean something specific, right? We're never going to be able to perfectly define the boundaries of what this space is. We have never been able to do that. When I say traditional war games, I mean hex and counter war games. That is what I mean. There's probably a little bit of truth to this too. Gamers who were in their teens and 20s back in the 70s or 80s or whatever, who now are adults with decent jobs and their kids left home and now they can get into this stuff again and they got a little bit extra cash to spend on it. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Gaming in general is no longer niche, okay? Just so we're clear about that. People who do not play, who don't play games, play games. Now, they might be playing some mobile gem matching game on their phone, but that's still gaming, right? Wargaming is certainly a niche within a niche within a niche, but gaming itself is no longer niche, right? It's totally mainstream now. We've got friggin' TV shows about people playing D&D. So it is up to us to teach the next generation and to be a good examples. I'm not that great of a teacher, but I can at least attempt to be a positive, a voice of positivity. Let me put it that way. And the Empire of the Sun, the vassal module for Empire of the Sun is phenomenal. Certainly is a factor here. Space communists. I don't know who we're talking about here. We will be playing Wargames. I have no doubt that we'll be playing Wargames in 50 years. They might look better. I mean, they might be digital, but we'll be playing Wargames in 50 years. I've never tried to make the statement that computer Wargames are not Wargames. I think that's a bit fatuous to suggest that. I will absolutely say that I don't prefer them, but that's me, right? I'd rather play an analog game, and I think in many cases the modeling in the analog game is better and more sophisticated than it is in the digital game. How far behind are we? Quite a bit behind. Oh, we're talking about lighting farts now. There have been plenty of issues with their stewardship of SPI. I do think they're making an effort to improve, and I do think they are improving. Let me put it that way. I'm interested in seeing some of the older stuff, some of the old SPI stuff that they're going to redo as box games over the next couple of years. Yes, I am not inclined to try to make the case that just because something is newer, it is necessarily better. But there is a general arc of progress in design of whatever, right, games or whatever else that you can see, and that there are more tools in the toolbox of designers now than there used to be. Some of those tools came from non-war games, right? But let's not also forget that some of those non-war games borrowed stuff from war games, right? A great example of, if you look up, I think Hex Encounter on BGG as like a category, just look through that list. Wherever you just drop it in a random place in that list, you might be surprised what you'll find in that list that is like clearly not war games, right? I don't know that we're really more charts. I mean, I was going to give you an example here, and then I remember that my example came out in 1973, so maybe it's a terrible example. So I know a lot of people. That, this is anecdotal and just a facet of the people I talk to. I know a lot of people that played gamers stuff very heavily, right, between OCS and CWB and whatever else. Played gamer stuff very heavily. I guess the trouble with this is if you look at like where AI is in computer games, not just computer war games, but computer games in general, it's not in a great condition. So there's that. Oh, that's a good point. Clash of Arms, actually, which has been a mainstay of the hobby. I mean, admittedly, they don't do a ton of releases, but they're still around. Ed's still cranking out. And they have a tremendous legacy of games over at Clash of Arms. Command Magazine, that was Command did some good stuff. I don't want to say never. I'm not going to say never. I'm going to say we're not close to that in anything resembling a commercial space right now. Now, see, I didn't feel like Pacific War, having played some of it, up to and including some of the campaign scenarios, I did not feel that it was particularly chart heavy. There's a lot of charts, but you're not constantly referring to that many of them, to be honest. I did not feel like it was particularly chart heavy in a way that I thought was noteworthy at all. And remember, that's a game from like 1980, 85, 87, something like that. I don't know, most everyone. I don't know if most everyone. I mean, but I did, right? So anecdotally, sure, yeah. I mean, I came back in 2007 or something like that, and I had dropped out for about a decade because I didn't think it was I didn't think there was anything happening. I thought people were playing ASL and that was it. I think there's something to this too, and I am cognizant of not wanting to overstate the influence of YouTube because it is the platform that I am on. But I do feel like this has made a difference. I mean, this was when I got back in, I'm like, I have told this story before. I'm like, well, shit, I guess I'm playing. I want to play war games again. I guess I'm playing ASL. And then I went on YouTube, started buying ASL stuff, and then I went on YouTube and said, oh, well, there's like stuff happening, right? It's not just ASL. In fact, there was some ASL, but there was, that was like a quarter of what I was seeing at the time. So yeah, I do think that because YouTube is a place where people do tend to turn for information, that it has been a factor in maintaining and or raising the visibility of war games. Earth Stink. Wow. Okay, I can get Earth Stink here. I went with Spectrum because it sucks less. It sucks, but it sucks less. All right, so we are trying to catch up. At its peak, SPF production was insane. Yeah, I mean they did. I forget where this came from. Somebody said they were shooting for like 30 releases a year, and that's crazy. And it's no wonder that some of those turned out to be a little bit slapdash, right? And a lot of them, I mean, a lot of that output was magazine releases. But remember, they were also doing 3 magazines at one point, 2 of which had games in them. And, I don't know whether they would count like a magazine game that later appeared as a box game as a separate release. I would be inclined to, but I don't know. So, Molotov Cocktail games, that topic. I'm not sure what that topic is. We've been kind of all over the place for the last hour. Chess. Oh, okay. So I am not the kind of player who is ever going to play one game, right? I'm just not. That's not me. I'd like to be more focused, but there's only so much I can do, right? This is my fundamental nature is I want to play everything. At least every war game, right? I'm also aware that I have finite time and finite resources and finite attention span. So I got to be a little bit picky, and but what I did was make the decision that, okay, I'm going to pretty much do war games and then a very narrow slice of RPGs and then an even narrower slice of non-war game board games, right? And although I do the occasional computer game, I haven't touched a computer. Since Starfield came out, and I played it very intensely for about a month, maybe 5-6 weeks, and then I played it much less intensely for a couple of weeks, and then I didn't touch it for a couple of months, and then I went back to it for five more hours and finished the main story, and it's kind of where I left off. And I'll look at it again when we start getting mods or an expansion or whatever. But I just don't have much time to do computer games, right? I had to make a point to clear the time to play Starfield when it came out. So we've got some back and forth here. No one was really doing what SPI was doing with that level of output at the time. They had magazines and monthly production runs. Yeah, that's true. I don't think we still have not. I will occasionally say something to the effect that the closest thing today's Avalon Hill is GMT, because they do a lot of stuff. They do a lot of different kinds of stuff, but they still kind of orbit around wargaming. I don't think we have seen anything like what SPI used to be in terms of model or design philosophy or output. I don't think that's been duplicated in any way. I don't know about in any way, but I don't think that's been duplicated in those ways. Tabletop's Edge says SPI is overrated. Lots of people being worried. So this is a total factor, right? Nostalgia is a real thing, and I am as vulnerable to it as anybody. I just try to be self-aware of when I'm succumbing to nostalgia. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I bought over the last few years. That the only reason I bought it is because I had these games when I was a teenager. That is totally a factor. All right, we're going to buzz through here, folks, because we are already over time. My commiserations. We will pour one out on the curb for the folks in Australia who have to pay through the nose for shipping, and apparently for whom I have become the complaint department. Not to pick on the Australians. Now, it's not just the Australians complaining to me. Everybody's complaining to me. To some extent, I do think this is true. Best place to get old games is at conventions, or flea market, or however it works. Remember, we're not allowed to have auctions here in Ohio. So, I love my Australian friends, don't get me wrong, but man, you guys are taking it into shorts on the shipping. What can I say? Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Scandal erupts at the end of the show. Stigler has bought a decision game. Oh my goodness! I will tell Tony. I'm going to see Tony next week. I'm going to see Tony on Friday. I am going to tell Tony that an infamous Decision Games basher has bought his game from Decision. This is fantastic. I am going to get at least 30 minutes of mileage out of this when I see Tony this weekend. So, this is totally true. They're still turds. In fact, I think I got lost along the way where recent releases from GMT, Panzer North Africa has been very warmly received. Tento Manta, not so much. Lots of folks have had not great things to say about it. It's not, I don't know that it's a disaster, but it's got some problems. Are we talking about Coal Whirly? I think it's pretty clear that Root is inspired by Coin. That doesn't make it Coin. It just makes it inspired by Coin. TSR did some straight reprints, some light revisions, and a few things that were entirely their own. And a few things that were in development at SPI that migrated and eventually made their way out the door by TSR. So we're going to spin down. I'm going to catch up to the chat here. Hopefully I don't miss anything. I apologize for all the people that I've missed today in the chat. Sorry about that. We had 160 some people. I'm not getting any numbers here, but we had like 170 people or so at one point. So there you go. There you go. Awesome. John has gotten his quarterly delivery from his freight forwarder. Star Wargaming specifically because, well, hey, that's worked out, right? That you're doing great, Jeff. So sooner or later, I'm going to actually have some people over here, and Jeff's going to be on the list because he's pretty local. So after Winterfest, frankly, I feel like I could get a whole show out of this. Chess versus Wargames. And how chess differs from wargames. I don't like chess. I know that a lot of wargamers do like chess. I don't like chess. I think that it is kind of for this reason, because it's got this sort of very restricted decision space that you, in theory, right, can like obsessively study every possible outcome and predict what's going to happen. I don't think that's really possible to do to nearly the same extent in wargames because the rules are so much more complicated. We're trying to catch up here. Mo says, nostalgia's totally real. Look back at some of the movies we loved years ago. Some hold up, many don't. But yeah, this is totally right. I'm not drinking whiskey fast enough here tonight either. It's okay, we're going to kill it. The hell hath frozen over. Oh my God. ATO is doing some good stuff. Now, I mean, so this is really complicated because it's like ATO the magazine and then Turning Point Simulations and then Lands Connect, and there's like another arm of that. So it was very complicated. Well, so are war games, but they're less finite, right? The finitude is bigger. So, and this is true too, right? Where you've got there's like a community of like expert chess players. That's true for remarkably few war games where there's like a pool of expert players. The two that I can think of, three probably. Labatai, ASL, and OCS. I know people who are like really proficient players of those games. And they play a lot of those games. And mostly they play those games mostly, right? So I assume this is in response to what I said. Or are we saying that the AI in video games is eons ahead of where it is in war games? Because I will disagree with this. I think where we start talking about AI in analog games, where I'm talking about bots, basically, and I'm talking about stuff like the Erasmus bot, Mark Herman's various bots, or a lot of the coin bots, I think those are more sophisticated and will lead to a stronger opponent than most computer war games. I'm sure there are exceptions. The John Tiller stuff is supposed to be an exception to that. But I may have lost the thread of conversation here. All right, folks. So we are going to drink a swig of whiskey instead of water. Good stuff, this Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Rye. I have remembered to buy whiskey for Winterfest this year. Very exciting. I know Mark loves chess. Mark is like on the board. He's like the treasurer of the Marshall Chess Club in New York City, which is like a big major chess club, right? A historic chess club. I'm not there with Mark on that. I kind of get it. And I think that Mark, I can sometimes see that influence in Mark's design, sometimes, not all the time. Like in Pacific War, absolutely not. In something like Gettysburg, yeah, I absolutely can see that. But I'm not there with chess. It does not have the interest to me. But, you know, a big part of the thing that drives my interest in war games is history. And chess is not about history. Chess is chess, right? So, all right, folks, we are out of time. We are more than out of time. In fact, we are well past time. It is 10:12. So we're going to call it an evening. We've already had some drop-off here. I would like to thank everybody for coming out. If you haven't already, thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel. There's links in the video description to do the supporty things. Big shout-outs to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair. We're gonna see them in just a second here. And don't forget about the affiliate link for Noble Knight Games, the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show. We are, as of when I check, 13% of the way towards Campaign for North Africa. I'm sure it's going to be significantly higher when I get new numbers from Noble Knight. I just have not yet. So I want to thank once again everybody for coming out tonight. We will be back tomorrow with Dan at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time with a very special guest, Ben Hull. There will be shorts all week, and there should be an unboxing on Thursday. What is the unboxing on Thursday? The classic Napoleon from Columbia Games. They were kind enough to send me a copy. So that is the 1973 release I was thinking of. It's like 6 pages of rules, man. It's incredibly easy to play. Cool game. Anyway, check that out on Thursday, and then I'll schedule some stuff for next week while I'm at Winterfest. There will be a video every day, but many of the days will be shorts. We will be broadcasting on Monday, bandwidth permitting, live on Monday night for the counterclipping stream, but we will not have a chit show next Tuesday, so bear that in mind. All right, once again, everybody have a great rest of the night, and we will see you all again very soon.